"Shut up, or I'll make you." Those 6 words were the last mistake Greg Vance ever made as a free man. He thought he was just bullying his wife in a crowded restaurant, establishing his dominance like he did every night behind closed doors. He thought his VP title at Stratos Dynamics made him untouchable, but he didn't check who was sitting at the table right behind him. He didn't know that Dante Rossi, the capo of the Chicago syndicate, was having a quiet drink 3 feet away. And he certainly didn't know that in the underworld, disrespect isn't handled with HR complaints. It's handled with blood. This is the story of how one arrogant husband lost everything in 10 minutes. The crystal chandelier above table 9 at l'Orangerie didn't sparkle for Elena Vance. It looked more like shattered glass waiting to fall. It was October 14th, their 5th wedding anniversary. For most couples in the upper echelons of Chicago's social scene, this would be a night of champagne toasts and diamond gifts. For Elena, it was a performance review, and she was failing. "You're slouching," Greg hissed, cutting into his medium-rare filet mignon with a violence that made the china screech. "Fix your posture. You look like a washerwoman, not the wife of a vice president." Elena straightened her spine against the velvet chair, wincing slightly. The bruise on her ribcage from 3 days ago, when she hadn't ironed his shirt fast enough, was still tender. "I'm sorry, Greg. It's been a long day. The charity auction planning. Nobody cares about your little charity parties, Elena," Greg interrupted, taking a heavy swig of his scotch. He was a handsome man in a conventional, corporate way, jaw square, hair perfectly gelled, wearing a $3,000 Armani suit. But his eyes were dead, shark-like voids that only lit up when he sensed weakness. "I bring in the money. You just spend it to make yourself feel important. Do you know who's watching us right now? The CEO of Vanguard is 3 tables over. If you embarrass me tonight, you won't like what happens when we get home." Elena gripped her fork until her knuckles turned white. She was 32, beautiful in a fragile, haunting way, with dark hair cascading over a dress that cost more than her father's car. But inside, she was screaming. She had tried to leave twice. The first time, he froze her bank accounts. The second time, he threatened to frame her brother Lucas for possession of narcotics, a threat easy for Greg to follow through on, given his connections with corrupt heavy hitters in the precinct. "I'm trying, Greg," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, keep your voice down." "Don't you dare tell me what to do." Greg's voice rose, sharp and biting. A few heads at nearby tables turned. Greg thrived on this, the public dominance. He loved the fear in her eyes. It made him feel like a god. "I bought you this life. I bought the clothes on your back. Without me, you're nothing. You're just the poor girl from the South Side I took pity on. I have a degree, Greg. I had a career before. You had a hobby," he sneered, dropping his fork. "Look at you. Pathetic. Crying over a steak dinner. You're ungrateful." "I'm not crying," Elena lied, blinking back the hot tears stinging her eyes. She reached for her water glass, her hand shaking. Greg's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was like a vice, crushing the delicate bones. "Stop shaking. You're making a scene." "You're hurting me," she gasped, trying to pull back. "I'll hurt you a lot more if you don't get that look off your face." Greg leaned in, his face inches from hers, smelling of expensive scotch and rot. "You smile, you eat your dinner, and you thank me for it. Or so help me God, Elena." "Greg, please, people are looking," she pleaded, her voice cracking. That was when he snapped. The mask of the civilized corporate executive slipped completely. He squeezed her wrist harder, twisting it, forcing a small cry of pain from her lips. "Shut up, or I'll make you," Greg snarled, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear clearly. "One more word, and I'll drag you out of here by your hair." The restaurant went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. The hum of conversation died. In the sudden vacuum of sound, Greg looked around, puffing his chest out, daring anyone to challenge him. He was Greg Vance. He owned the room. But he was wrong. At the table directly behind Greg, A man had been sitting alone for the last hour. He was reading a leather-bound book and nursing a glass of 1982 Petrus. He hadn't looked up once, not when the waiter brought his food, not when the couple came in. But when Greg said, "Shut up, or I'll make you," the man at the next table slowly closed his book. The sound of the heavy book cover snapping shut echoed like a gunshot in the silent restaurant. The man at table 4 didn't look like the other patrons of l'Orangerie. While the other men wore navy and gray corporate cuts, this man wore a black suit that absorbed the light. It was bespoke, Italian, tailored to fit a frame that was broad, muscular, and lethal. He had dark hair, slightly graying at the temples, and a scar that ran through his left eyebrow, interrupting an otherwise classically handsome Roman face. He stood up. He was tall, 6'4", towering over the seated Greg Vance. He picked up his wine glass, took a slow sip, and then set it down with a deliberate clink. "Apologize," the man said. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low, gravelly baritone that vibrated through the floorboards. It wasn't a request. It was a command issued by someone used to armies obeying him. Greg released Elena's wrist, spinning around in his chair, his face flushed with indignation. "Excuse me? Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm the man whose dinner you're ruining," the stranger said, his eyes fixed on Greg. They were cold, hard eyes, the color of slate. "And I'm the man telling you to apologize to your wife. Now." Greg laughed. It was a nervous, incredulous laugh. He stood up to face the stranger, trying to reclaim his dominance, but he instantly realized his mistake. He had to crane his neck to look the man in the eye. "Listen, pal," Greg sneered, pointing a finger at the man's chest. "I don't know who you think you are, but I'm Greg Vance, Senior VP at Stratos Dynamics. I pay $3,000 a year for membership at this club. So why don't you sit your ass down and mind your own business before I have the manager throw you out?" The stranger didn't blink. He looked down at Greg's finger poking his chest, then back up at Greg's face. The look was one of mild curiosity, like a scientist looking at a bug he was about to crush. "Stratos Dynamics," the stranger repeated. "That's the firm handling the logistics for the new Port Authority contract, isn't it?" Greg faltered, surprised. "Yeah, that's right, big money, serious people, so back off." "Serious people," the stranger mused. He took a step closer, invading Greg's personal space. The air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Greg, do you know who owns the land the Port Authority warehouses are built on?" "The city," Greg said, though his voice wavered. "Wrong," the stranger said softly. "My family does, the Moretti Trust." Greg's face went pale. The blood drained from his cheeks so fast it looked like he might faint. Everyone in Chicago knew the name Moretti. They didn't appear in the society pages. They appeared in federal indictments that mysteriously got dropped. They were the ghost stories of the corporate world. If you wanted union problems to vanish, you called a guy who knew a Moretti. You're, Greg stammered. "Dante Moretti," the man said. He extended a hand, not to shake, but to smooth the lapel of Greg's jacket. It was a terrifyingly intimate gesture. "And you are being very loud, Greg. I don't like loud noises. And I don't like men who threaten women." Elena sat frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at Dante Moretti. He was terrifying, yes, radiating a dangerous power that made the air feel heavy. But when his eyes flicked to hers, the coldness vanished for a split second. There was something else there. Recognition? Pity? It's just a domestic dispute," Greg squeaked, his arrogance evaporating into pure cowardice. "She's emotional. You know how women are." Dante's hand moved faster than the eye could follow. Crack. It wasn't a punch. It was a backhand slap, delivered with casual, dismissive force. Greg flew backward, crashing over his chair and sprawling onto the floor. The restaurant gasped. A waiter dropped a tray of silver. Greg scrambled backward on the expensive carpet, clutching his bleeding lip. You assaulted me! I'll sue! I'll call the police! Dante stepped over the overturned chair. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. He reached into his inner pocket. Greg flinched, expecting a gun. Instead, Dante pulled out a pristine white handkerchief. He wiped his hand, as if touching Greg had dirtied him, and dropped the cloth onto Greg's chest. "Call the police, Greg," Dante said calmly. "Captain Miller in the 4th Precinct is on my payroll. The judge who would sign your warrant plays poker at my house on Thursdays. Go ahead, make the call." Dante turned his back on Greg, dismissing him as if he no longer existed. He turned to Elena. For the first time all night, someone looked at her with respect. "Mrs. Vance," Dante said, extending a hand. His palm was calloused, rough, but his touch was gentle as he took her hand. "I apologize for the disturbance. I don't think your husband will be driving you home tonight. May I offer you a ride?" Elena looked at Greg, cowering on the floor, wiping blood from his chin, too terrified to speak. She looked at the restaurant patrons, watching her. Then she looked at Dante. For 5 years, she had prayed for a savior. She expected a knight in shining armor. Instead, she got the devil himself. She took his hand. "Yes," Elena whispered. "Please, get me out of here." Dante nodded to the maitre d', who was standing by, pale and shaking. "Put Mr. Vance's bill on my tab, and call him a taxi. If he tries to follow us, break his legs." The maitre d' nodded vigorously. "Yes, Mr. Moretti, of course." Dante guided Elena through the stunned restaurant, his hand resting protectively on the small of her back. As they pushed through the heavy oak doors into the cool Chicago night, Elena realized 2 things. 1, her life as Greg's victim was over. 2, she had just walked out of the frying pan and into a very dangerous fire. The silence inside the obsidian black Maybach was absolute. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of the restaurant, a hermetically sealed capsule of leather and darkened glass moving through the arteries of Chicago. Elena sat pressed against the door, her hands still trembling in her lap. Next to her, Dante Moretti sat with the stillness of a statue. He wasn't looking at her. He was typing a message on a secure phone, his face illuminated by the pale blue light of the screen. "Where are you taking me?" Elena asked. Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from the suppressed crying. Dante finished his text and slid the phone into his pocket. He turned to her, and in the passing streetlights, Elena saw the sharp angles of his face. He looked dangerous, yes, but there was a calmness to him that Greg never possessed. Greg was a storm of insecurity. Dante was the mountain the storm broke against. "To a safe house," Dante replied, "or a hotel, or your parents' house. Wherever you want to go, Elena. Except back to him." "I can't go to my parents," she said quickly, panic flaring. "My father, he thinks Greg is the best thing that ever happened to our family. He wouldn't understand. And if I go to a hotel, Greg will find me. He tracks my credit cards. He has an app on my phone." Dante extended his hand. "Give it to me." Elena hesitated, then handed him her sleek smartphone. Dante didn't look at it. He simply rolled down the window. The cold October wind rushed into the warm car. Without a word, he tossed the $1,000 device out the window. It skittered across the pavement of Wacker Drive and vanished under the wheels of a passing taxi. "He doesn't track you anymore," Dante said, rolling the window back up. "As for your credit cards, you won't need them. You are my guest." "Why?" Elena asked, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving her exhausted. "Why did you do that? You don't know me. I know who you are, Mr. Moretti. Everyone whispers about your family." "And what do they whisper?" Dante asked, a faint, dry amusement in his tone. "That you're criminals. That you kill people." Dante looked out the window at the passing skyline. "They aren't wrong. I am a criminal, Elena. I operate outside the law. because the law is too slow and too corrupt to handle the real monsters. But even monsters have a code. We don't touch children, we don't sell poison, and we never, ever raise a hand against a woman. He turned back to her, his gaze intense. I watched your husband for 40 minutes. I watched him break your spirit piece by piece. I saw the bruise on your arm when you reached for the salt. I saw the fear in your eyes. I have a sister, Elena. If a man ever spoke to her the way Greg spoke to you, I wouldn't just slap him. I would bury him. Elena looked down at her hands. He's powerful. He's a VP at Stratos. He knows police captains. He'll come for me. Let him come, Dante said, softly. Greg Vance is a man who thinks power is a job title. He's about to learn that real power is something you take, not something you're given. The car slowed, turning into the underground garage of a massive glass spire, the Obsidian Tower. It was one of the most exclusive residential buildings in the city, a fortress of steel and privacy. The driver, a massive man with a shaved head named Enzo, opened the door. Dante stepped out and offered his hand again. This time, Elena took it without hesitation. They took a private elevator directly to the penthouse. When the doors opened, Elena gasped. The apartment was a cavernous space of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. It was modern, stark, and undeniably masculine, filled with abstract art and dark wood. But it was also warm. Enzo will stand guard at the elevator, Dante said, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. He looked less like a mafia boss now and more like a tired man returning from war. There is a guest suite down the hall to the right. It has a lock on the inside. No one, not even me, has a key. You are safe here. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Greg was raging. But up here, 70 stories in the sky, she felt untouchable. Thank you, she said, turning to face him. But you don't know Greg. He's vindictive. He won't just let this go. Dante walked to a crystal decanter and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He walked over and handed one to her. Drink, he ordered gently. It's brandy. It will help the shock. She took a sip. The liquid burned pleasantly, warming her chest. Elena, Dante said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. You are worried about what Greg will do to me. You are confused. You think this is a battle between 2 corporate men. It is not. Greg is a sheep who just bit a wolf. He shouldn't be worrying about how to get you back. He should be worrying about whether he survives the week. Dante pulled his phone out again. Go to sleep. I have some calls to make. By tomorrow morning, Greg Vance is going to wake up in a very different world than the one he lived in today. Elena nodded, fatigue finally washing over her. She walked toward the guest suite but stopped at the door. Dante? He looked up. My brother, she said, her voice trembling again. Greg, he holds things over me. He threatened to frame my brother Lucas for drugs if I ever left. Lucas is a good kid. He's in rehab, but Greg has connections. Dante's eyes darkened. If it was possible, he looked even more terrifying than before. But the rage wasn't directed at her. What is your brother's name? And where is he? Lucas Silva. He's at the St. Jude's Recovery Center on 5th. Dante nodded once. Go to sleep, Elena. Lucas is under my protection now. If a cop so much as looks at him wrong, the precinct burns. As Elena closed the heavy oak door of the guest suite and turned the lock, she slid down to the floor, finally allowing herself to weep. But they weren't tears of despair. For the first time in 5 years, they were tears of relief. Greg Vance woke up on the floor of his living room at 10 a.m., his head pounding with the rhythm of a jackhammer. His mouth tasted like stale scotch and dried blood. He sat up, groaning, and touched his lip. It was swollen, split down the middle. Memories of the previous night came rushing back like a tidal wave of sewage. The restaurant, the humiliation, the man in the black suit, Dante Moretti. Greg scrambled to his feet, rage instantly replacing the hangover. Elena! He screamed, storming into the kitchen. Elena, get your ass out here! The house was silent. The pristine white marble countertops gleamed. Empty. No coffee. No breakfast. No wife. "That bitch," Greg hissed. He grabbed his phone. He had tracked her location last night until the signal suddenly died on Wacker Drive. She had actually run away with that gangster. Greg's hand shook, not from fear, but from a narcissist's indignation. How dare she? He owned her. He had saved her from her mediocrity, and this was how she repaid him? By humiliating him in front of the city's elite? "I'll destroy her," he muttered, "and I'll destroy that greaseball Moretti too." He dialed a number he had saved as Captain Miller, 4th Precinct. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. "Vance? It's Sunday morning. What do you want?" "I want to report a kidnapping," Greg barked, pacing his living room. "My wife was abducted last night from L'Orangerie by Dante Moretti. I want him arrested. I want a SWAT team at his place. Now." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Miller?" Greg shouted. "Did you hear me?" "I heard you, Greg," Captain Miller said, his voice sounding oddly strained. "Listen to me very carefully. You need to calm down." "Calm down? That thug assaulted me. He kidnapped Elena." "Greg," Miller cut him off. "I saw the police report from the beat cops who responded to the restaurant last night. Witnesses say you were assaulting your wife. They say she left with Moretti willingly. That's not kidnapping. That's a woman leaving a domestic abuser." "That's a lie," Greg screamed, kicking a kitchen stool. "I pay you a fortune in consulting fees every month, Miller. Do your job. Go. Get my wife." "I can't help you with this one, Greg," Miller said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't understand. It's Moretti. I got a call at 6 a.m. from the commissioner. He told me that if any officer from the 4th goes near Moretti or his properties today, they lose their badge. The order came from way above my head." "You coward," Greg spat. "Fine, I'll handle the brother then. Go pick up Lucas Silva. Plant whatever you have to plant. I want him in a cell by noon. That'll bring Elena running back." "Greg, stop." Miller sounded terrified now. "Lucas Silva was checked out of St. Jude's at 2 a.m. He was transferred to a private facility in Switzerland. The paperwork says it was paid for by the Vanguard Trust. That's a Moretti shell company. The kid is gone. He's out of reach." Greg froze. "Switzerland? That's impossible." "It's not impossible. It's Dante Moretti," Miller said. "Look, Greg, take some friendly advice. Stop. Pack a bag. Go to your summer house in the Hamptons. Lay low. You picked a fight with the shark, and you're bleeding in the water. I'm blocking your number after this call. Don't contact me again." The line went dead. Greg stared at the phone, his face turning purple. Everyone was against him. They were all incompetent cowards. He didn't need them. He was Greg Vance. He was the senior VP of Stratos Dynamics. He controlled the logistics for half the Midwest. He had leverage. "Fine," he snarled. "I'll hit them where it hurts." "The wallet," he showered quickly, ignoring the throbbing in his lip, put on his most aggressive power suit, and drove his Porsche 911 toward the Stratos Dynamics headquarters. It was Sunday, but he had access. He would log into the system, flag the Port Authority contracts, the ones Moretti's family relied on, and freeze the supply chain. He would cost the Moretti family millions until they gave Elena back on her knees. He pulled into the Stratos parking garage, screeching his tires. He marched to the executive elevator, swiped his platinum keycard, and waited. The light on the reader flashed red. Access denied. Greg frowned. He swiped again. Access denied. Stupid machine, he muttered. He walked to the security desk. The guard on duty was a man Greg had ignored for 10 years. "Hey, my card isn't working. Override the elevator." The guard looked up. He didn't smile. He didn't rush to help. He looked down at a clipboard. "Mr. Vance, I've been instructed to confiscate your badge." "Excuse me?" Greg laughed, a high-pitched, incredulous sound. "Do you know who I am? I'm the senior vice president. Open the damn elevator. Mr. Vance? A voice boomed from the lobby entrance. Greg turned. It was Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Stratos Dynamics, a man Greg had spent his entire career trying to impress. Usually, Thorne was warm, a mentor figure. Today, he looked like an executioner. He was flanked by two men in dark suits. Stratos Legal. Marcus, Greg said, relieved. Thank God. This idiot guard is... Greg, you are trespassing, Marcus said coldly. Greg blinked. Trespassing? Marcus, it's me, Greg. What is going on? Marcus walked over, stopping 3 feet away. At 8 a.m. this morning, the board of directors received a dossier. It contained emails, Greg. Emails sent from your work account arranging kickbacks with city suppliers. It also contained video footage of you physically assaulting your wife at l'Orangerie last night. That footage is currently trending on Twitter. Hashtag StratosVT is the #1 hashtag in Chicago. That footage is taken out of context. Greg stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. And the emails? I never sent any kickback emails. The digital forensics team says otherwise, Marcus said. We have a zero-tolerance policy for domestic violence and corporate fraud. Your contract is terminated for cause, effective immediately. You lose your stock options. You lose your severance. And legal is currently drafting a lawsuit against you for breach of fiduciary duty. You can't do this! Greg screamed, the walls of his reality crumbling around him. I built this department! The Port Authority contract! You need me for that! The Port Authority contract? Marcus let out a dark, humorless laugh. The Moretti Trust contacted us an hour ago. They said they would be happy to continue doing business with Stratos, provided the cancer was removed. You are the cancer, Greg. Marcus signaled to the security guards. Escort Mr. Vance off the premises. If he resists, call the police. And Greg, I'd suggest you get a lawyer. A cheap one, because you're not going to be able to afford the good ones anymore. Greg was paralyzed. In the span of 12 hours, he had lost his wife, his reputation, his job, and his fortune. As the security guards grabbed his arms, dragging him toward the revolving doors, Greg looked out at the street. Across the road, parked idly by the curb, was a black SUV. The window rolled down just an inch. Greg saw a pair of slate-gray eyes watching him. Dante Moretti. Dante didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply watched as Greg was thrown out onto the sidewalk like a bag of trash. Then, the window rolled up, and the SUV drove away, merging seamlessly into the traffic. Greg sat on the concrete, the cold seeping into his expensive suit. He was alone. Truly, completely alone. But the nightmare wasn't over. Dante had promised to make him shut up. And Dante Moretti was a man who over-delivered. As Greg sat there, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from his bank. Alert. All accounts frozen pending IRS audit. Greg threw his head back and screamed, a primal sound of defeat that was swallowed by the indifferent noise of the city. Time in the Obsidian Tower moved differently than it did in the world below. Down on the streets of Chicago, autumn was turning into a biting gray winter. But inside the penthouse, in the world Dante Moretti had built, there was only a quiet, steady warmth. It had been 3 weeks since the night at l'Orangerie. For the first week, Elena barely left the guest suite. She slept for 12 hours a day, her body finally crashing after 5 years of high adrenaline survival mode. When she did wake, she found trays of food left silently outside her door. Fresh fruit, warm pastries, herbal teas. No demands, no forced conversations, just sustenance. Dante was a ghost. She heard him sometimes, the heavy tread of his boots in the hallway late at night, the low murmur of his voice on the phone in the study, but he never intruded. He was keeping his promise. He was giving her space. By the second week, The fog began to lift. Elena started to venture out. She explored the library, a massive room smelling of old paper and leather. She sat on the balcony, wrapped in a cashmere throw Dante had left for her, watching the city lights. She began to see the small touches of care everywhere. The books on the nightstand were her favorite authors. How did he know? The toiletries in the bathroom were the specific brand of lavender and oat milk she used to buy before Greg forbade it, because he said it smelled cheap. It was on a Tuesday evening that the distance finally broke. Elena was in the kitchen. The professional chef Dante employed had left for the night, leaving a fully stocked refrigerator. For years, cooking had been a chore, a performance where if the risotto wasn't perfect, she was punished. But tonight, she wanted to reclaim it. She found flour, eggs, and tomatoes. She began to make pasta from scratch, the rhythmic kneading of the dough acting as a meditation. "It smells like my grandmother's kitchen in here." Elena jumped, spinning around, flour dusting her cheek. Dante was leaning against the doorframe. He looked exhausted. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and ink. There was a fresh bruise on his jawline, stark and purple against his tan skin. I didn't know you were home," Elena stammered, instinctively wiping her hands on a towel, her heart rate spiking. "I can clean this up. I'm sorry if I made a mess." Dante frowned, pushing off the doorframe and walking toward her. He moved with that predatory grace, but he stopped a respectful distance away. "Elena, look at me." She looked up, fighting the urge to flinch. "You never have to apologize for making food," he said softly. "And you never have to apologize for existing in this house. This isn't a museum. It's a home, or at least, I'd like it to be." He looked at the flour on the counter, then at the boiling pot of water. "Is there enough for two?" "I haven't eaten since yesterday." Elena blinked. The feared capo of Chicago, the man who had destroyed Greg Vance's life with a few phone calls, was asking her for dinner like a shy schoolboy. "Yes," she said, a small, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time in years. "It's tagliatelle pomodoro. It's simple, but—" "Simple is good," Dante said. He pulled up a stool at the kitchen island. "I'm tired of complicated." They ate in the kitchen, bypassing the formal dining room. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was companionable. Dante ate with a hunger that betrayed how hard he worked, but his manners were impeccable. "Your brother called today?" Dante said, pouring her a glass of red wine. Elena froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Lucas, is he okay?" "He's doing well. The clinic in Switzerland is the best in the world. He's gained weight. He's detoxing. He asked about you." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were safe. I told him you were free." Dante swirled his wine, looking into the dark liquid. "He told me something interesting, Elena. He told me you used to play the piano, that you were accepted into Juilliard before you met Greg." Elena looked down. "That was a lifetime ago. Greg didn't like music. He said it was a distraction." "Greg was a fool," Dante said flatly. "There is a Steinway in the living room. It hasn't been played in 10 years. It belonged to my mother." "I couldn't," Elena whispered. "I'm rusty. I haven't played in 5 years." "Then play badly," Dante challenged her, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Make noise. Bang on the keys. Do whatever you want, Elena. But don't let that man's voice in your head silence you anymore." After dinner, she sat at the piano. Her fingers hovered over the ivory keys, trembling. She took a breath and played a C major chord. It rang out, rich and resonant, filling the empty spaces of the penthouse. She began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. At first it was halting, clumsy, but muscle memory is a powerful thing. Soon, the melody flowed, melancholic and beautiful. She poured everything into the music, the pain, the fear, the relief. When she finished, she realized she was crying. She felt a presence beside her. Dante was standing there, handing her a handkerchief. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Why are you doing this?" Elena asked, looking up at him through her tears. The clinic for Lucas. The clothes, destroying Greg. Why? Dante sighed, sitting on the piano bench beside her. He was close enough that she could smell the scent of sandalwood and rain on his skin. Because I know what it's like to be trapped, he said, his voice rough. My father, he was not a good man. He ran the family with an iron fist. He beat my mother. He beat me. I was 18 when I finally stopped him. He didn't elaborate on how he stopped him, but the darkness in his eyes told the story. I made a vow, Dante continued, that I would never be him, that I would use this power to protect, not to crush. When I saw you that night, I saw my mother. I couldn't save her. She died before I was strong enough. But I could save you. Elena reached out, her hand hovering over his, then finally resting on his scarred knuckles. It was the first time she had initiated touch. You did, she whispered. You saved me. Dante turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her that Greg had never inspired in 5 years of marriage. Elena, Dante said, his voice dropping to a rumble. I need you to know something. I am a dangerous man. My world is violent. I have enemies who would kill you just to hurt me. Staying here, it's a risk. I'm not afraid of you, she said, realizing it was true. You should be, he said intensely, but I promise you this. I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you again. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers for permission. Elena didn't pull away. She leaned forward, closing the gap. His lips brushed hers, tentative, gentle, a question rather than a demand. It was soft, sweet, and terrifyingly intimate, but before it could deepen, Dante's phone buzzed violently on the piano lid. He pulled back, a look of frustration crossing his face. He glanced at the screen, and his expression instantly hardened into stone. The lover vanished. The capo returned. I have to take this, he said, standing up abruptly. Stay inside, Elena. Lock the doors. He walked out to the balcony, sliding the glass door shut. Elena watched him through the glass. He was pacing, his hand clenched into a fist, his face twisted in a snarl of pure rage. The peaceful bubble of the penthouse had popped. The war was calling. While Elena was rediscovering her soul in the clouds, Greg Vance was discovering the depths of hell on earth. He was staying in the Motel 6 off the interstate, near the industrial district. His Porsche had been repossessed 3 days ago. His credit cards were useless plastic. He had sold his Rolex to a pawnbroker for a fraction of its value, just to buy cheap Buell vodka and pay for the room. The room smelled of mildew and stale cigarettes. Takeout containers littered the floor. Greg sat on the edge of the stained mattress, staring at the wall. He hadn't showered in 4 days. Stubble covered his face, and his eyes were bloodshot and manic. He wasn't sad. He wasn't repentant. He was consumed by a black, cancerous hatred. Moretti, he muttered, taking a swig of vodka straight from the bottle. Stratos. Elena. They all think I'm done. They think I'm garbage. He threw the bottle against the wall. It shattered, vodka dripping down the peeling wallpaper. I'm not garbage, he screamed at the empty room. I'm a genius. I built the logistics network. I know where the bodies are buried. An idea sparked in his alcohol-soaked brain. A dangerous, suicidal idea. But Greg had nothing left to lose. Dante Moretti was powerful, yes. But in Chicago, power was a pendulum. And there was one family that had been waiting for the pendulum to swing back for decades. The Russos. Sal the Butcher Russo ran the South Side. They were brutes, lacking the sophistication of the Moretti syndicate, but they made up for it in sheer violence. They had been trying to get into the Port Authority shipping routes for years, but Dante kept blocking them. Greg scrambled for his laptop, the only thing he hadn't sold. He logged into a cloud backup he had made months ago, a just-in-case file. It contained the encrypted security codes and shift schedules for the Stratos warehouses, the warehouses Dante used to move his special cargo. Greg smiled. It was a jagged, ugly smile. He had the keys to Dante's kingdom. 2 hours later, Greg was standing in the back room of a meatpacking plant in the slaughterhouse district. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and raw meat. Sitting on a plastic folding chair in the center of the room was Sal Russo. He was a massive man, obese and sweating, eating a sandwich with hands that looked like catchers, mitts. 2 armed guards stood behind him. So, Sal chewed loudly, crumbs falling onto his shirt. You're the corporate stiff who got tossed out by Stratos, the one who got bitch-slapped by Dante Moretti in a French restaurant. Greg bristled, but he swallowed his pride. I'm the man who can hand you the Port Authority. Sal stopped chewing. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Talk. I know you've been trying to move product through the docks, Greg said, his voice gaining strength. But Moretti's people check every container. You can't get your merchandise into the city. And you can fix this? I have the override codes, Greg said, tapping the USB drive in his hand. This drive disables the biometric locks on Warehouse 4 and 5 4A. 2-hour window every night. It also loops the security cameras. You can move whatever you want, whenever you want. Drugs, guns, bombs. Moretti won't see a thing until it's too late. Sal stared at him for a long moment, his beady eyes calculating. Then he laughed. It was a wet, wheezing sound. You got balls, Vance. I'll give you that. You're selling out your old boss to screw your wife's new boyfriend. I want them dead, Greg said, his voice cold. I don't care about the money. I want Dante Moretti to watch everything he loves burn. And I want Elena back. I want her to know she can't leave me. Sal beckoned one of his guards. Check the drive. The guard took the USB, plugged it into a laptop, and typed for a minute. He looked up and nodded. It's real, boss. These are root access codes. We could empty the whole port. Sal smiled. It was a terrifying sight. All right, corporate, you got a deal. We use your codes tonight. We're bringing in a shipment of hardware that Moretti banned from the city. High-grade military stuff. Once we're locked and loaded, we pay Mr. Moretti a visit. And Elena? Greg asked. If she survives the crossfire? Sal shrugged. She's all yours. Back at the Obsidian Tower, Dante walked back into the living room. His face was pale. Elena was still sitting at the piano. She stood up immediately. Dante, what's wrong? We have to leave, Dante said, his voice clipped and urgent. Now, Enzo is bringing the car around. What happened? My contact at the docks just went dark, and the security grid for the warehouses just went offline. Dante grabbed his jacket, checking the clip in his handgun with practiced ease. Someone shut down the eyes and ears of the port. There is only one person who had those codes besides me. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Greg. He sold us out, Dante said grimly. He gave the Russos a back door. They aren't just smuggling tonight, Elena. They're mobilizing. They're coming for the tower. Suddenly the building shook. A dull boom echoed from the lobby, 70 floors below. The lights in the penthouse flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. They're here, Dante whispered. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing Elena's arm. Listen to me. We are going to the roof. There's a chopper. I need you to trust me more than you ever have. I trust you, Elena said, her voice shaking but firm. Dante pulled her close, kissing her forehead hard. Then run. As they sprinted toward the service stairs, the elevator chimed. The doors slid open. 3 men in tactical gear stepped out, assault rifles raised. Get down! Dante roared. He tackled Elena behind the heavy marble island of the kitchen, just as the room erupted in gunfire. Bullets shattered the crystal decanters, the expensive art, and the Steinway piano. The war had arrived, and Greg Vance had opened the door. The penthouse, once a sanctuary of silence and warmth, had become a kill box. The air was thick with drywall dust, and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Dante pressed Elena down behind the marble island. "Stay low," he hissed. He didn't look scared. He looked focused, a general in his element. He reached under the counter, ripping away a false panel to reveal a hidden cache, a shotgun, and 2 extra magazines for his handgun. "Dante!" Elena screamed as a bullet ricocheted off the marble inches from her head. "Enzo!" Dante shouted into his earpiece. "Status!" "Lobby is overrun, boss." Enzo's voice crackled, breathless and accompanied by the sound of automatic fire. Russo brought an army. They rigged the elevators. "I'm holding the stairwell on the 60th floor, but I can't get to you." "Hold them as long as you can," Dante ordered. He turned to Elena. "We can't go down, we have to go up. The helipad." "The elevator is compromised," Elena gasped, clutching his arm. "We're taking the service ladder in the pantry. It leads to the maintenance deck." Dante racked the slide of the shotgun. "On 3, move fast, don't look back." 1, 2, 3. Dante surged up, firing the shotgun. Boom, boom. The roar was deafening in the enclosed space. 2 of the Russo hitmen dropped. The third scrambled for cover behind the overturned sofa. "Go!" Dante roared. Elena scrambled on her hands and knees into the pantry. Dante followed, providing covering fire with his handgun. They scrambled up the narrow metal ladder, the darkness below them flashing with muzzle flares as more gunmen poured into the apartment. They burst onto the roof into the biting Chicago wind. The city sprawled below them, indifferent to the violence above. Dante's black helicopter sat on the pad, its rotors already spinning slowly in the wind. But they weren't alone. Standing by the helicopter, illuminated by the red strobe lights of the landing pad, was a figure in a torn suit. He was holding a pistol, his hand shaking violently. It was Greg. "Going somewhere?" Greg screamed over the wind. He looked like a madman. His eyes were wide and erratic, his teeth bared. "I told you, Elena. I told you you couldn't leave me." Dante stepped in front of Elena, shielding her. "Greg, put the gun down. You're out of your depth." "Shut up!" Greg shrieked, waving the gun wildly between Dante and Elena. "You ruined everything. My job, my money, my life, but I won. The Russos are downstairs. You're dead, Moretti." "The Russos used you, Greg," Dante shouted back, his voice calm and carrying over the wind. "They don't leave loose ends. Once they have the port, do you think they'll let the man who betrayed his own company live? You're a liability." Greg faltered for a second. The doubt flickered in his eyes. But then he looked at Elena, beautiful, strong, standing behind the man she actually loved, and his narcissism snapped the final tether of his sanity. "It doesn't matter," Greg yelled. "If I can't have her, no one can." He leveled the gun at Elena. "No!" Dante lunged. Bang! The shot rang out. Elena screamed. Dante stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Blood blossomed on his white shirt, but he didn't fall. He kept moving, a wall of pure will, crashing into Greg. They hit the concrete deck hard. The gun skittered away toward the edge of the roof. Greg was younger, but Dante was a fighter. Dante ignored the bullet wound, delivering a brutal elbow to Greg's face. Greg howled, clawing at Dante's eyes, fighting dirty, fighting for his life. "Dante!" Elena cried. She saw the gun lying near the edge. She scrambled for it. Greg kicked Dante in the wound, forcing a grunt of pain from him, and scrambled to his feet. He saw Elena reaching for the gun. "Don't you touch it!" Greg roared, rushing at her. Elena grabbed the pistol. She rolled onto her back, raising it with both hands. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were clear. She remembered the bruising on her ribs. She remembered the insults. She remembered the fear. "Stop, Greg," she said. Her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a command. Greg stopped, panting, 5 feet away. He sneered. "You won't shoot. You're weak, Elena. You're nothing without me." "I was nothing with you," she said. Behind Greg, the roof access door burst open. Sal Russo waddled out, flanked by 3 men. He saw the scene. Dante bleeding on the ground, Greg facing down his wife. "Well, ain't this a family reunion?" Sal laughed. He raised his heavy revolver. "Kill them all." Greg turned, realizing the truth of Dante's words too late. "Sal, wait. We had a deal." "The deal was for the codes, corporate," Sal grinned. "Thanks for those." Sal fired. He didn't aim for Dante. He didn't aim for Elena. He shot Greg. The bullet caught Greg in the chest. He staggered back, a look of pure shock on his face. He looked at Elena one last time, his mouth opening to say something. An apology? A curse? Before he toppled backward over the edge of the roof. He fell 70 stories. Silent. Gone. Sal turned his gun toward Dante. "Your turn, Moretti." Thwip, thwip, thwip. A spotlight blinded them from above. A police helicopter roared over the edge of the building, the letters SWAT emblazoned on the side. "Drop your weapons!" A voice boomed from the loudspeaker. "This is the CPD." Sal looked up, blinded. "What the?" Dante smiled through the pain. He looked at Elena. Captain Miller finally decided to pick a side. Within seconds, tactical teams rappelled onto the roof from the hovering chopper. The Russos, caught in the open, threw down their weapons. Sal was tackled to the ground, screaming curses. A medic rushed to Dante, applying pressure to his shoulder. Elena crawled over to him, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the soot and blood. "You're okay," she sobbed, pressing her forehead against his. "You're okay." Dante reached up with his good hand, cupping her cheek. "I told you, Elena, I'd burn the city down for you." 6 months later. The terrace of the villa in Lake Como overlooked the shimmering blue water. The air smelled of lemon trees and salt. Elena sat at a grand piano that had been moved outside, her fingers dancing over the keys. She was playing something new, something light and joyful. She stopped as a shadow fell over her. She looked up and smiled. Dante stood there. His arm was fully healed, though a new scar joined the collection. He looked different here, relaxed. The darkness that usually clung to him had lifted, replaced by peace. "Lucas is on the phone," Dante said, handing her the mobile. "He says he got accepted into the architecture program in Zurich." "That's amazing," Elena beamed, taking the phone. "And," Dante added, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. The final papers came through. Stratos Dynamics went bankrupt after the investigation into Greg's fraud. The Moretti Trust bought the assets for pennies on the dollar. The warehouse workers have unionized. No more corruption. "Karma," Elena said softly. "Karma." Dante agreed. He looked out at the lake. Greg thought he could force the world to obey him. He never learned that you can't command respect. You have to earn it. Elena stood up, wrapping her arms around his waist. "He told me to shut up. He said he'd make me." Dante pulled her close, the love in his eyes overwhelming. "And now," he whispered, "you're the only voice I ever want to hear." Elena smiled, pulling him down for a kiss as the sun set over the water, finally, truly free. And that is the tragic, karmic end of Greg Vance. He had everything, money, status, and a loving wife. But his arrogance cost him his life. It just goes to show, be careful who you step on, because you never know who is watching from the next table. If you enjoyed this story of justice, romance, and revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What do you think? Did Greg deserve his fate, or was it too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.